Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast series from Pharma Voice. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship from Syneos Health. Visit syneoshealth.com. In this episode, Teri Loxam, editor-in-chief of Pharma Voice magazine, meets with Teri Loxam, CFO, SQZ Biotech.
Teri, welcome to the Pharma Voice WOW podcast program.
Thanks, Taryn. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to be talking with you.
It's our pleasure. Teri, can you please tell us about your career journey, which I understand started with you as a marine biologist?
Yeah, I definitely haven't had a conventional career path. As you mentioned, I started out as a marine biologist, and growing up in Canada, I didn't live by the ocean, but I spent hours sitting in my dad's office while he was working, reading National Geographic and Jacques Cousteau books. And that really led to my love for the ocean and killer whales and sharks in particular. So I eventually got my degree in marine biology, and I was fortunate enough to work for one of the foremost experts in killer whales on the west coast of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. To this day, I still love the oceans and animals, and I love Shark Week every August on Discovery. I still love Shark Week. But I also found that my love for the ocean wasn't the only thing and passion that I had, and that it was really a passion for learning that I really had, and having new challenges, and that has really shaped my career throughout my journey. So after working as a marine biologist, I got the opportunity to start a stockbroking company in San Diego, and that was really my first foray into business. I've pivoted a number of times. If you look at my resume, it's definitely not linear. I've pivoted. I've worked as an investor relations for IMAX Films. I've worked for several healthcare companies, most recently at Merck, and now I'm the CFO of SQZ Biotech. So, like I said, it's an unconventional career path, but given the breadth of my experiences across so many different industries, it really gives me a chance to look at challenges and find solutions in very unique ways. I can bring all these various pieces of my journey to bear when I need to solve a problem. And I've had the confidence in my ability to learn quickly and really tap into those around me to fill in my gaps along the way, since I've often jumped into roles that I've known nothing about previously. So it sounds to most like I've taken a lot of career risks, which I have, but these have all been moves that I've made with considerable thought. And my mantra has always been, and I live by this, that if I can live with the worst case scenario, then I should take that risk. And that has really guided my career. And fortunately, my path has led me here to SQZ, which is just a fantastic company.
Well, that's a lot to unpack there. I'll have to say that. That is amazing. And I love the diversity of experiences that you bring to the fore. And I am fascinated about that leap right into stockbroker, because that's a pretty big leap to go from the marine biology area right into there. But tell me about your passion for healthcare and what led you to SQZ.
Yeah, I've always had an interest in the sciences, which, that is something that has kind of followed me throughout my career. And it led me into healthcare and into SQZ in particular. And as I mentioned before SQZ, I was at Merck. And while there, I was able to really dive into a field called immuno-oncology, which is having your immune system help fight cancer. It's become a very big area of study, and some amazing new therapies have developed. And while there, and while really diving into immuno-oncology, it was acknowledged that cell therapies could provide additional benefit for cancer patients, but there remained a lot of questions around whether they could be manufactured at large scale, and there was, a lot of safety and toxicity issues for patients. So when I was introduced to SQZ, I was so impressed by their unique science and the potential for this cell therapy company to be able to potentially solve those challenges that others have faced. And our cells are capable of so much. They're powerful machines. And so as the name Squeeze, our company name suggests, what we do is actually physically squeeze cells to insert materials that give your immune system directions to help fight cancer and other diseases. And so the concept and the science and the elegance of this approach really, really intrigued me. And given my background at Merck, I knew just how transformational this could be. So beyond the science, I also met the management team and the CEO in particular, who's the founder and an amazing scientist, but he also has really amazing business instincts. And I knew I wanted to work for him. So the combination of that incredible science and the scientists and the management team really led me to believe that this company could transform the cell therapy space. And I wanted to be a part of that.
That's fascinating. And so I want to personally wish you success and good luck as you go forward, because it sounds like it's a breakthrough kind of approach. And goodness knows we need all the forward progress we can make in cancer care.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. As a CFO, talk to me about your influence on the strategy and the business policy of the company. How deep do you go into figuring out what happens in terms of development or other areas?
Yeah, I actually dive pretty deep, and I've really taken that across all of my roles in my career, that the more I can understand about the fundamentals of what the company does, the better I can help influence decisions. And so whether it be, the science at Merck or the science at Squeeze, really trying to understand those nuances and details has been important as I've ramped up in this new role. As part of the executive team, I'm intimately involved in all aspects of the strategy and policies of the company. And I'd say, given where Squeeze is, we're a smaller private company looking to go public eventually. And because of that, having the appropriate financial resources to enable that research that we're doing and the advancements in development is really critical. So I'm usually there every step of the way to really understand what are the development options and what resources might we need and how can I help make that happen. But beyond the typical kind of CFO related matters, I can also leverage my experience in investor relations and communications to really help influence the strategy and business policy in a number of other angles. I ran global communications at Merck as well as investor relations. And so bringing that to Squeeze, it's not only about the scientific developments and the advancements that we're making in development, is how do we get the scientific community and the patients to understand what we're doing? And given how unique Squeeze is from a science perspective, it's going to take a lot of education. So I'm also, able to weigh in with the team in terms of collaborating to make the best decisions on the science side, but also trying to figure out how do we get that message across to the outside world? How do we let people know the scientific advancements that we're making? What are the venues? How do we tell our story in a way that is compelling so that the world can see and fully appreciate the breadth of what Squeeze has to offer? And so as a management team, we're collaborating constantly on those dynamics, both the external storytelling as well as the internal scientific developments.
Teri, that is so interesting, and it's so unique to find somebody who has that financial acumen along with that communications prowess. So that's a powerful combination.
Yeah, it has really benefited, the teams that I've worked with. And like I said, I'm passionate about learning, and putting those two skill sets together, I found is really a great skill set to have.
Yeah. So all of us out there who are listening to this, maybe we need to brush up on one or the other. That's amazing. So let's go back to your time at Merck for a little bit. I know you were involved in several significant events, including working closely with Ken Frazier, and the CEO Social Responsibility Initiative, and the launch of, as you said, some of their top cancer drugs. What were those experiences like? Because you really were in the trenches there, especially with that CEO social responsibility program.
Yeah, you're right, Taryn. My experiences at Merck were tremendous. And Ken Frazier, as many of the listeners may know, is such an inspirational leader. And I am privileged to have had the opportunity to work closely with him and learn from him. He influenced the type of leader I am to such a great extent. And it was an amazing experience being at Merck. It really working at Merck and what Ken taught me was to really be flexible as well as prepared for any type of scenario. You mentioned a few. It was a very challenging time for the industry and continues to be in terms of, making sure that patients have proper access to medicines and pricing issues. And really being able to navigate all of that was critical. And in particular, what Ken taught me was how important it is to know what the values and the mission of the company are and to stick by them. Even if it feels like it's rocky times in the near term, if you stick by those and really be true to those values and the mission, that really leads you to the right place in the long run. And you mentioned the launch of Keytruda. So at Merck, there was a strong legacy of letting the science and the data drive decisions, along with an unwavering commitment to patients. Those were really the values and the mission that the company embodied. And this was really important as we launched Keytruda, which is now one of the most widely prescribed cancer medicines ever. It's in that immuno-oncology space that I mentioned before, where it really harnesses your immune system to attack the cancer. And we launched this at a time when Merck was not considered a cancer company. Historically, Merck had always been, or primarily been, in the primary care business and cardiovascular and metabolics. So there was a lot of skepticism when we were trying to launch Keytruda because we weren't a typical cancer company. And in the early days, it was really an uphill battle to demonstrate for investors and the medical community just how important and meaningful this cancer treatment could be for patients. And so, getting back to kind of that blend of communications and, financial and strategy, our team had to spearhead a shift in perception with a new vision, a new corporate narrative to really change how Merck was viewed by stakeholders, but at the same time, maintaining that legacy and that what we kind of science-first approach. And it really showed me just how important storytelling is for a company. Policies and data wasn't enough. We needed to really overcome a perception issue to let the science shine through. And it took a lot of time and we had to overcome many skeptics, but we were able to educate the scientific community, and now patients are benefiting tremendously around the world. And that really stuck with me, and something that I've really brought to Squeeze, given that Squeeze is going to be really chartering, it's uncharted territory here. And so, Ken's words are always in the back of my mind, whereas do right by the science, do right by the patients, the rest will follow. And that's something that is continuously going through my mind as we're making decisions here at Squeeze, and as we are trying to transform that cell therapy space and really provide treatments for patients that are not only safe and effective enough, but that can be used across multiple disease areas. So it's just a tremendous learning experience across a number of areas at Merck, which are all really directly applicable to my experience here at Squeeze.
That's fantastic. And you talked about some of the things you learned from Ken, the need to be agile, the need to be able to pivot, and the need to be a good storyteller. So keeping that in mind, how would you describe your personal leadership style?
Yeah, Taryn, actually, my leadership style, I think, has really developed over time, both inside and outside of my career. My leadership style really embodies teams and identifying unique talents in individuals, sometimes ones they don't know that they have. I'm a talent seeker. I often, can look at individuals and see where their strengths are and really put them in the right position so that each individual individual is elevating the team in total. And that really goes back to my time growing up. I grew up playing a lot of team sports, and I was actually the only girl on a boys hockey team until I was 16. And then later in life, I've also been the only girl on men's teams as well. And that really taught me kind of how to look at teams in a unique way. Being the smallest and the only girl, I was often in a position where I had to find kind of the gap in the team. Where could I add the most value? Where could I get in the game? And by being able to really tease out the different individuals on the team and the team as a total, and figure out how can I elevate that team, was a skill that I have adopted and honed over the years. And, oftentimes when I was growing up playing these sports, and especially being the only girl, there was a lot of skepticism at first. They didn't even want me to be in the game. By the end of the season, they were often counting on me to help lead the team. And all those experiences really I bring to bear in the business world, where I am always trying to figure out, what skills do I have? What gaps do we need to fill? How do we make the most of this team and make sure that we're rewarding the team more than the individuals? Because you can have a team of superstars that don't go anywhere, but a team who trusts each other with open communication and who are really trying to achieve the same objective and has each other's backs, that's really where the magic comes alive. And that's really my leadership style, is building these strong teams, helping navigate people through their careers, identifying their talents, trying to put them where they're going to succeed, and giving them that confidence to take the risks that I've taken as well.
That's awesome. I love that, and now the story. Thank you for sharing that about your younger days and playing hockey and being the only girl or young woman on some of these teams, and giving you
Absolutely
different perspective and the courage and confidence to be a leader. One of the questions I do ask of what are some of those leadership qualities you look for in your executive team members? I think you've covered some of that, but specifically, if you could just identify and talk to, like, when you're looking to build out that executive team, are you looking for folks that maybe don't have the same skill sets that you have, or how do you build that out?
Yeah, Taryn, you hit on a couple of the areas. Having that diversity across the team is critical, and I'm often not looking for the superstars. As I mentioned, it's really about putting a team together with shared goals and objectives that have the same drive and passion, and that will work together. And the diversity aspect of that is critical, and that can be diversity in backgrounds, in styles, in experiences, and ideas. There's a lot of talk these days, about diversity, and there's so many aspects to diversity that are critical. So for me, having open, collaborative dialogue where we don't always agree, but where we can come to the right place, is usually the best kind of team. And that comes with having all of these diverse people around the table. And it really comes with a trust and a communication that is open. And like I said, making sure people recognize that you can make mistakes, that you can debate and collaborate, and it's good. It helps to open your eyes into different ways of looking at situations, and that generally through that collaboration you come to a better place. And so those are some of the qualities, really, that diversity, the passion, the drive to get to that end objective, making sure we've got a shared objective. I've found those to be critical.
Fantastic. You obviously are no doubt not unaccustomed to being an N of one in situations. But how does that experience of being maybe the only woman in the boardroom sometimes, how does that impact you? How do you manage through that?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I often call myself an N of one. And I think all of us need to think about it in that way, that everybody is unique in a certain way, and that we're often whether it be gender or otherwise, an N of one in a room. It could be, an experience set or skill set. And so having been the only girl on a boys hockey team and other sports, it definitely has translated into my professional life and has actually, I think, helped me succeed in the business world. Not being, being accustomed to being that N of one, not being intimidated, and really doing what I needed to do to build my own skill set, to make sure that I walked into that room with confidence and that I had something to say that was valuable. It goes back to those days that I was playing hockey where I needed to figure out where can I add the most value. And I always, as I was going into those boardrooms, and I've many times been in the boardroom alone as a woman, and I'm always trying to think, how do I add that unique value? How do I get this team to a better place? And I've never wanted different rules, never asked for any special circumstances. As I always say, I've always been willing to battle it out on the playing field and on equal terms. And I think that has benefited me because it's made me the best version of myself, but also it's given me the confidence to state my opinions and to help influence decisions in those rooms and really shift mindsets along the way. And I'll never forget it. It was early on in my days. I was at Bristol Myers Squibb, another large healthcare company, and we had come out of this board meeting. It was probably 20, 25 people, and I was the only woman. And as we were coming out of that room, there was the next set of people who were going into the room for the next meeting, and it was some younger people in their career. I walked past this group of young women. They're like, "Look, she was the only one in that boardroom who's a woman. That's amazing." And that really stuck with me and helped me recognize not only the value I can bring in the boardroom, but also I really try to be a role model for others, women or otherwise, to just be confident and really find where you can add that value and go for it.
That's an excellent piece of advice, adding that value to whatever role you're in, right? So keeping that in mind, what are some other pieces of advice you might offer to women who want to reach that executive role, that want to climb the ladder?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot over the years and thought through, what advice have I been given that has helped drive my career. And some of it goes back to some of the things we've already talked about, Taryn, which is really, having confidence in yourself, really not being boxed in, to look outside the box and think through what is that ultimate objective that we're trying to solve. Don't be too constrained by job descriptions or the role that you're in. If you see a need and you can add that value, take it. And to really help drive that forward. And I'd say a lot of the, risks I've taken, even within a company, have been making sure I'm on special projects where people can see me beyond my current job description. How can I add value? How can I be seen in different ways so that you're not pigeonholed into any particular type of role or type of activity? And I give that advice to a lot of women, is don't be afraid to raise your hand. Even if you have no experience in an area, if you've got a passion for learning, and if you are willing to do some extra work outside, and really get up to speed so you can add that value, take that risk. Put your hand up, volunteer for new opportunities to show how good you can be in roles outside of the one people see you in today.
It's an excellent piece of advice. That's awesome. You have plotted out a very successful and purposeful career. And I'm just wondering, is there anything you know now that you wish you knew as you were moving up the ranks?
Oh, Taryn, hindsight's 20/20 for us all. There's so many times I had fretted, at night about what I had said or what I had done, and will it be a career derailer? And what I have really learned, and wish I had known early on, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to ask for advice, and asking for advice is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength and confidence. That took me a long time to figure out, especially because I was always trying to prove myself in new areas. It made early on, I didn't want anyone to see my weaknesses. And I think had I embraced it more in terms of being able to ask for help and showing that as a strength, that I could have gotten further along faster, and not to fret over some of the small stuff. You can't change the past. You can only rechart the future. And so instead of, those late night fretting about what you said and not using the exact right word or not doing the exact right thing, think about it and figure out how would you use it going forward, and then do it the next time. And then the other thing I would say is really share as much information as you can with those around you. And this goes back to that building the teams, and sharing your skills and sharing your information makes the team better. And I've oftentimes seen people hoard information, and I've made that mistake myself early on in my career, where I thought if I knew the most, I could share and add that value. And what I soon recognized is by hoarding that information and not sharing, I was actually holding myself and the team back, because I was not inviting in those diverse ideas and opinions that could broaden the information and make it better. And so those are, I'd say, three of the important things that I've learned along the way. I wish I'd known was, and it's okay to make mistakes. Don't fret too much about the past, and share and collaborate as much as you possibly can.
Those are three wonderful tips. Thank you so much for sharing those. And finally, because it is our WOW podcast, tell me about an accomplishment or a moment in your career that either has left a lasting impression on you or changed the trajectory of your career.
Yeah, Taryn, I think I've had so many just amazing accomplishments that I'm proud of in my career, and having taken so many different directions. It's hard to single one out. However, you brought it up earlier, and to me it is probably one of the most defining parts of my career, is when I made that transition from marine biology into business and jumped from being a marine biologist to helping start a stockbroking company. At that time, I had never traded a stock in my life. I knew very little about business. I didn't even know what a stockbroking company was. And yet I had read a business plan, was really curious, and was really intrigued by the other two people who were starting this company. And so I jumped in, and I spent a summer cramming for all the stockbroking licenses, which luckily I passed. And became a self-taught accountant because there was no one to manage the books, became secretary of the board, a compliance officer, and ultimately that company ended up getting bought by a partner of ours. And helping to build that company and jumping in to such an unknown territory that was I was 180 degrees from where I had been before. That experience, I think, really defines how I approach my career and how I approach life, which is have the confidence that you can learn. Know that if you surround yourself by good-natured, smart people that you're willing to tap into for help, you can really tackle anything. And I've often looked back on that and said, as I might have mentioned earlier in our discussion, I've lived by the mantra, if you can live with the worst case scenario, you should take the risk. And that comes up over and over and over again in my life. And I often look back on that particular wow moment and say, look what I did. I was able to transition from being a marine biologist to helping build a company in an area I knew nothing about. I can tackle this next challenge. And it's really given me that confidence to take those risks and to hone those skills in terms of learning and building teams and leveraging others. And it's driven my career as well as outside of my career. has given me tremendous, tremendous confidence.
Teri, it's been awesome to talk with you. Thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself on the podcast and providing such tremendous insights. And I look forward to hearing what Squeeze does in the future. And best of luck with the cell therapy and moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Taryn. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed talking with you and your questions, and look forward to speaking again one day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. And thanks again to Syneos Health for sponsoring this episode. For more information, visit syneoshealth.com. And don't forget to check out our other WOW episodes at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2020 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks LLC.